Hello, folks. We are launching a gas station in partnership with Gnosis. So if you are building on Gnosis and you want some gas transactions sponsored, apply on August 1st. You can find the information on the SAFE website, safe.global/gas station, or go to the Gnosis Twitter or the SAFE Twitter and get your gas covered for the next 6 months. Okay, cool.
Nice. And then the second announcement I want to do is that we are cooking something really cool events-wise. So we are going to organize Dev Conflicts during DevCon. This is the first official announcement we are doing, so you are the first audience to get to know this. On Friday, we will officially announce it on social media, so please stay tuned. We will share more information about it. But basically, this will be an event where we aim to be a credible, neutral platform to solve the biggest conflicts in blockchain. So yeah, stay tuned, and we will share more information about it on Friday. And then we can move forward finally for our first presentation. That will be hosted by Alex Bash. I hope I'm pronouncing well. Please welcome Alex. Alex is the CTO and co-founder of Zerion. Zerion is a Web3 smart social wallet and an investment tool. And Alex will be talking about Zerion's advanced UX. So please give a round of applause to Alex. Thank you.
All right, this works. All right, all right. Okay, perfect, thank you. Yeah, so I decided to name my talk Zero Friction today, but what I'm actually going to be talking is just like about the combination of wallets and a chain and why we at Zerion believe that it actually makes lots of sense. And just to do like a little bit of intro, you probably, like first of all, of course, the last season has been all about like all this like L2s, like rollups, everyone tried to launch their own chain. And you've probably heard a lot about like general purpose chains, like everyone trying to bootstrap their ecosystem. There have been lots of examples, like starting with Base, of course, leading the way, but then lots of other players like Blast and many others trying to create their ecosystem on chain. And then, of course, you've probably heard about like app chains or like app-specific chains where like different gaming kind of tools tried to like roll out their own chains for their own reasons. And today I'm gonna play with an idea of like wallet chains and why we believe that idea also makes sense and why we actually planning to launch our own rollup that we call Zero, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit as well. But overall, I just like want to discuss that topic and like explain a little bit like how we think about things and why we believe that the combination of the wallet that we already have and a rollup that we are about to launch actually will allow us to provide the best possible UX in the industry for the end users who use the wallet. So that's the brief intro, and yeah, my name is Alex Bash, and I'm the CTO and co-founder of Zerion, and yeah, but it's not about me, so I'll just continue. And just like to sense what's going on here, how many people have heard of Zerion before? Okay, pretty much every single one. That's great, I love this audience. Okay, then I don't need to spend too much time either explaining what Zerion is about. I'll just say a few words that we've always been in this space trying to make it as easy, as simple, as enjoyable for the users to do things in Web3, on-chain, etc. We started out as a portfolio aggregator tool. We were one of the first tools that could actually show you all your DeFi portfolios and all the different tokens spread across different protocols. Later, when new chains started appearing, we started indexing them as well, trying to make sure that we don't miss any of your assets. And later, a couple of years back, we decided that everything that we do should actually be part of a wallet, not just like some additional third-party tool, but actually integrated into your wallet. Because if you think about like more traditional Web2 kind of tools, you sort of expect from your bank to show you how much money you have there. So we felt like for Web3, that piece was missing. chain. So we started building out our wallet, focused on that, while still preserving that mission of making it super seamless, still tracking everything that's going on, trying to be as user-friendly as possible. So what's next? And first of all, I also want to, well, first of all, our mission is making on-chain enjoyable and rewarding, and we want that to be the case for all the parties involved. And I want to briefly talk about like 3 different parties that we think about. Of course, first of all, it's the actual end users, and what users want, they just want the seamless experience. They want to be able to interact on chain, do their own thing, like mint NFTs, trade meme coins, do like whatever they want to do, and in the most seamless manner, with as few clicks as possible, with as little fees as possible, etc., etc. So for the users, it's clear. And I think for developers, I actually wrote EVM compatibility here because we are still a lot about EVM chain, and there's lots of tooling. And I feel like the biggest network effect that Ethereum and the EVM ecosystem has, it's all the tooling and all the developer tools that have been created over 10 years. I think it's going to be 10 years actually since Ethereum mainnet launched very soon. So all the tooling is what like keeps the ecosystem together. I don't know how many of you are developers here, but any of you who like actually writes code understands how important to have the right tooling in place is, like all the test frameworks, all the stuff to easy deploy stuff. It's crucial. And that's why for developers, it's crucial that whatever happens, it's still kind of built on top of the existing tooling. And it's possible to break that network effect, and I think Solana is a good example where like with their own tooling, they still manage to create pretty solid network effect and still attract lots of developers, but it's strong. And finally, for creators, and by creators, I mean like on-chain creators and who produce any sort of content in any sort of form and shape. It can be variety of NFTs, it can be some tokens that they create, it can be even protocols, games, anything that is like fungible in some sense, can be interacted with, can be collected. That's what I call content, and people who create that I call creators. And of course, what they care about is just the distribution. They want to be as close to the users as possible. They want to be seen, they want to be noticed, so they want that direct access to the audience that will learn about their content and stuff that they create, and potentially if they like it, they will use it. So these are like the things that we cared about, and that's where our idea of the wallet and chain comes into picture, because we believe that, well, first wallet we already have, and that's the distribution. We have like roughly 500,000 active monthly wallets that actively explore on-chain, and that's like the platform that we can provide for creators. While for users, we can't really do much right now without controlling the underlying settlement layer, just because we need to rely on variety of chains, and we just like can't do more than whatever is possible. And that's why we were like exploring a lot how to bring that UX to the next level, and we actually chose ZK Stack. I'm not gonna go too deeply into technical details, but I just like want to outline a few things why we just like them. Some of you might have followed all these discussions about different EAPs related to account abstraction in the Ethereum space. It all started with 4337. There was like 30 something something that was later replaced by 7702 that like Vitalik proposed. And I don't know if you're in any of these chat groups, but it's crazy. I don't think these people will ever, well, I hope they will agree on something, but it's gonna take them a while. So like account abstraction space is like super weird. And we've been waiting for a long time for all these developers to agree on some common standards so that we as a end wallet could finally utilize that. I hope it will happen one day, but it's not here yet. That's why we decided we better take things in our own hands. And exciting thing about ZK Stack that this team led by ZK Sync is actually silently built pretty amazing tech. And they basically just got rid of the notion of externally owned account. So every address there is a smart contract, which means they have the so-called native account abstraction. And by leveraging their stack, we can actually have all the benefit of account abstraction, which in the future means recovery, forget about your private keys kind of stuff, use like multiple signers, use like session keys to authorize dApps to do things on your behalf, all that kind of account abstracted future that everyone is trying to sell you. I feel like it's much closer with that stack. I hope it's close enough for the rest of the chains as well, but we'll get there one day. And what is, I guess, most exciting and the first feature that we wanted to implement for our users, I said we care about like users, we want them to forget about gas. Because that's, I believe, the biggest friction in the space right now. And to be honest, these days it's not even about money. Like right now, the gas fees are negligible. You pay like maybe 2 cents for a transaction on some random layer 2. It's not much. But the whole mental effort that it takes to think, like in which asset usually you need to use Ether. Sometimes it's like some weird token that is native for that specific chain. So it just creates lots of unnecessary mental pressure on the user. So it's not about like the monetary amount. And actually the reason that it's becoming so cheap, we believe we as a company in a good place to actually sponsor that. And I think good analogy here is just like with traditional Web2 tools, like, you know, YouTube is not gonna charge creators for hosting their videos. Yes, YouTube still pays for their servers, but like it's free for you to upload that video because they know how to monetize from the creators on a different level. And we, controlling the interface and controlling the wallet, we also know how to monetize our users. We can charge them traditional trading fees. That's like what like Robinhood, like any real like Web2 player does. So I'm not saying we're gonna be free, but we just gonna remove that effort of thinking about like gas fees specifically. And I think that's like the first problem that we can solve for the problem that we're gonna solve for the users. And then also wanted to briefly mention on chain DNA, because like lots of people when I talk about free transaction start asking instantly about spam. And I think we had pretty bad example of chains like Binance Smart Chain that was so extremely cheap at the time that it was so full of like this meaningless activity, tons of bots, like tons of like, no one had any idea what's going on there. That's why just like this slide is basically to say that we actually understand that problem and we have our own solution how we're gonna judge people whether they're like good users or bad users. And simply speaking, we're gonna sponsor transactions only for the good users, and for the bad users, we're not gonna block their access, but then they will need to figure out the gas on their own. So no censorship, but if we suspect that you're doing something shady on the chain, we are probably not gonna pay for that shady activity there. And this is a complicated slide. I'm probably gonna skip it, but that roughly just illustrates how it's all gonna work. ZK Sync has, ZK Stack has native account abstraction infrastructure. It's very similar to 4337. So if someone is familiar, bootloader is basically the same thing as the entry point. But whatever, it's all somehow magically works. The users no need to worry about gas. And the testnet is already live, so anyone interested can actually go, and we actually have a great docs page where you can actually gasless. We can discuss that later, but basically it illustrates the experience how you can do a transaction without having any asset on the chain, just to see what it looks like to interact with the chain without actually bridging first or paying any gas fees. And I guess a few words about the next steps is, as I said, all of that, the combination of the wallet of the chain, potentially enables a lot more in the future. And I think the most exciting topics is, of course, the better account security model, as I already briefly mentioned. Think like some multi-sigs, additional signers, some 2FA even. So like for larger transactions, you will need some second signature, like session keys, etc. So all of that is gonna come eventually. I think chain abstraction topic is pretty exciting. How many of you have heard of like Magic Spend by Coinbase? Okay, just a few. But basically, Coinbase recently introduced that concept where, because Coinbase is centralized, they actually can pretty confidently ensure that you're not going to double spend the money that you have in your Coinbase account, and they're willing to upfront you with assets on any chains. So they call it Magic Spend because they can instantly buy any asset for you on any chain that you want using their own money, and then later settle it from your Coinbase account funds. And they can do that because it's centralized. And there are like lots of initiatives in the fully decentralized space how to solve that. Basically, the idea being how to use assets on one chain to buy something on a different chain. It's very, very complicated. It's not the topic of my talk today, but it's really hard to solve. cool thing is that if we control the sequencer and we control the interface, we are actually not that different from Coinbase in that example. So we can actually front users with their money to buy any assets on different chains using the funds that they have on our own rollup, because controlling the execution, we can actually ensure, again, that users are not going to double spend that. And that's just like one of the extra features that that design of combining wallet plus the chain enables. And then, of course, native ecosystem here is that for us, it will make sense to also have some liquidity and some major assets on our own chain. Ideally, for the end users, of course, that's the chain abstraction vision. You should not care where your Ether is. You don't need to know that it's like on 15 different chains. But for creators, it kind of matters where they create. And for like market makers, it also kind of matters where they settle. So we will, to optimize the efficiency of routes and like trading on the app, we'll probably need to bring some liquidity and apps naturally to our own rollup, but ultimately it should be something that is hidden from the end user so that the end users just enjoy amazing UX, pay no gas fees, buy any asset anywhere, and like don't bother where like which chain it really lives on. And that's sort of the future that we envision. And here are some links if someone is interested to learn more about that. You can already try out the testnet, you can read the docs, and the mainnet is coming pretty soon. And that was pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex, for your interesting presentation. We have time for a few questions, so if someone in the audience, okay, we have one.
Oh, no problem. It's okay. Hey, Alex, thank you. It was amazing. Yeah, the major question: how you want to like separate good behavior users from the bad one, because there is now like a lot of difference between them. For example, I want to verify my zero proof knowledge on your lab.
That's a good question. So I guess it's like a multi-iteration path. Like in the well, I guess first of all, a little bit of background. I guess all of you have heard, you've heard of Zerion, so you know that we know a lot about what's going on chain. So in the first iteration, we're just gonna use the existing data. We pretty much index everything. We know past activity of every single wallet. So just judging by that activity on different chains about like assets, about the behavioral patterns, we will making these decisions. And then in the future, of course, we will try to make it like more accessible, allow external parties to contribute to that as well. But in the very first version, it's just going to be purely based on the data that we have in-house. So it's going to be sort of centralized decision whether we like that particular wallet or not. And having said that, I believe we are pretty much incentivized to give these free transactions to as many users as possible. So I think we'll be pretty loyal with that. So I think it's very unlikely that any legitimate users will ever come across the situation where like our system decided that they are not good enough, because we would rather spend a little bit of money paying for that like weird activity than actually making the experience of legit users run. But yeah, short answer, just like utilizing the whatever indexed on-chain data across like 20 plus EVM chains that we already have.
Yeah, but if you're talking about like EVM compatibility, so that means that I can run any code over there. So for example, if I make some hard logic on the Zerion chain, so what's happened then? So I mean that I will be the user, the true user who will trigger the smart contract that make a mess on chain. So.
Yeah, but I guess if you will try to like whatever make a transaction that is going to send out like thousands of different like NFTs to people, we are probably going to notice that and just not sponsor that. Because like we can, like when you try to request the transaction, we will see, like we can interpret that, understand what's going to happen, and decide whether we actually consider that transaction looking like something a legit user will do.
Anyone else? We still have a couple of minutes. Can you approach, please? Can you? No, please approach.
Okay, so it's gonna be a shame if I'm totally wrong with that, because I might just didn't hear you. You spoke about subsidizing or like free transactions. So I was curious, like how can you do that money-wise? And then would lead me to the next question: how do you actually monetize? How will you live? Yeah, as an app, yeah?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I talked about subsidizing because it's technically we'll be paying for our own. But okay, so the tricky part is that because we're gonna run our own rollup, it means that we are just paying for the infrastructure. So technically, every single transaction is kind of free for us, minus the actual net cost of like running the prover, running the sequencer, the servers, like data availability. So whatever, all this like technical jargon that like actually makes blockchain run, but like we're not going to be paying to some external party for that gas. We sort of will be paying to ourselves, but we will just take the cost of like running that infrastructure. So it will still be out of pocket kind of money. But answering how we monetize, like as I briefly mentioned, we charge trading fees. So if you use like native swap forms, we are integrated with a bunch of aggregators. So like when you try to buy or sell some token through Zerion, we are always trying to find the best possible quote for you. And we also work with a bunch of private market makers. So actually sometimes the best quote can be available off public chain. So we'll just give you the best possible quote and then charge small convenience fee. And that's our primary business model.
Thank you. We still have time for one or two more questions. So if anyone has any more doubts.
Traditional question, when are you drop?
Who knows? Never. Maybe one day, yesterday. I don't know.
Wait, so there will be base tokens?
No, there is no token. Well, Ether is just going to be the base token.
Yeah, the question was about the token. So are you going to issue your own token, and what will be the purpose of it, if so?
No, we are not going to issue our own token. So Ether is going to be the base token for the chain. But again, for the users, it ideally shouldn't matter because base token is there to pay gas fees that we are planning to abstract away from the end users anyway. But developers probably won't care because they will need to deploy stuff. So for developers, it's relevant, not as much for the actual end users.
Quick one, how decentralized the rollup going to be?
Well, that's a tricky question because like the way all the rollups designed today, they are not really decentralized. And that's basically the whole idea of a rollup, that you sort of delegate the security to the L1, where you like roll up all the transactions that happen on L2. So the sequencer is going to be pretty centralized. We're going to run it in-house. But the best part is that it doesn't really matter because decentralizing the sequencer adds only one additional property, which is liveness in terms of security. So like basically worst case, if something happens, the chain might stop, which is unfortunate, but there is no technical way for us, or like any other rollup for that matter, to steal money or do any malicious transactions there, because that's what like the rollup technology is about. Like you delegate the security to Ethereum, which is super secure, and then it doesn't really matter how decentralized the actual rollup is.
A question about your ZK stack. Is it all built in-house from scratch, or do you leverage other infrastructure?
No, so ZK Stack is actually built by ZK Sync's team, like they're called Matter Labs. I think that's the official parent company name, so we are using their stack. It's all built by them.
Great. Then I think this is a wrap up. Thank you so much, Alex, again for
Thanks all.
for your presentation and amazing questions, audience.